Hello everyone, this is Shannon from Craft Ghetto. In today's video, we're going to play with Waffle Flower's new Wild Roses stamp set, which is part of their May release. And we're going to make a really colorful rainbow card and add color to these flowers without actually coloring them. I'm going to start today's card with a little ink blending. I have an A2 panel here of 110-pound white cardstock, and I have 4 distress ink colors. I'm going to start with picked raspberry at the top, and I'm going to be a little bit more heavy-handed on the left side of my panel, and as I blend out towards the right, I'm going to lighten my pressure so I create a nice gradation with this color. Once I finish with picked raspberry, I'm moving on to mustard seed. I am going to overlap the mustard seed a little bit over that picked raspberry. This is going to create kind of an orange color, and again I am keeping it a little bit more concentrated with my pressure on the left, so I create a nice gradation as I move out towards the right. Now moving on to my third color, this is peacock feathers. I'm going to overlap this peacock feathers a little bit over that mustard seed to kind of create like a greener color, more like a grass green. And then once I finish the peacock feathers, I'll move on to my last shade, which is salty ocean. So it's kind of like 2 gradations here. We have a gradation, an ombre kind of out to the right, and then the gradation of the colors as well. Now before I do my stamping, I need to create a couple masks. So this is the beautiful Wild Roses stamp set. I've pulled off 2 stamps from this set. I'm going to stamp the large flower on a post-it note, and then I'm going to stamp this stamp that has 2 flowers on a post-it note as well. And then I will just fussy cut these out, and these will be my masks. When I create masks, I like to cut right along the stamped edge. I even cut a little bit within the stamped edge. You just get a better mask that way. With my mask completed, I can now start stamping my flowers. So I'm take my largest flower here, the one that I created a mask for, and I'm positioning it in my Misty. I'm using a Misty today because I'm going to stamp these flowers multiple times. So I first inked it up in yellow, and I'm inking it up with this yellow right where that yellow background is. So that section of yellow, I want to make sure I try to ink up that portion of the flower that's there with the matching color. So I'm going to repeat this process for all of the images that I stamp. So this upper portion of the flower here is in that pink section, so I'm just eyeing it here, inking up that top portion with my pink, which is picked raspberry again. I'm going to ink it up a second time here, and I'm going to use my finger some points. You can see me doing it right now to kind of lighten that transition, so it's just a smoother transition from the pink to the mustard seed, so it's not quite like a sharp line, and I get a nice ombre doing that on the stamped image. So I'm not quite done with this flower yet. I feel like I need to do a little portion of the bottom here with my peacock feathers, so I just inked it up a little bit there, and now I have a little bit of that green because it actually overlapped the yellow that I stamped earlier, which is perfect because it's all, that section is a little bit green because that is where when we ink blended, we blended over the yellow to create kind of that green. So I placed down the mask. I just used a piece of micro pour tape to kind of hold it in place, and now I'm arranging some more of the stamps from the Wild Roses stamp set, and once I've got them all arranged, I pick them up with my Misty, and I'm going to start inking them up in the same manner that I did that large rose. I like to start with my lightest color of ink first, so in this case that is my yellow or my mustard seed. So I ink up those portions of the stamp that I want yellow with the mustard seed and then stamp them. I don't clean in between my stamping, so there is a little bit of residual ink left on the stamp, so there's a little bit of that mustard seed left on the stamp, but that mustard seed is a light color and it's not going to contaminate my picked raspberry when I apply it onto the stamp. And I am kind of avoiding, I'm not overlapping a lot my 2 colors, so I'm not really concerned too much about cross-contamination of my ink pads, but it is something that you should be mindful of, and always try to start with your lightest color first if you're going to do a kind of a multi-stamping step like this and not clean your stamps in between. This flower that I'm stamping now is the same flower that I actually stamped at the top. I just repositioned it to be now kind of below the large central rose and stamped that in mustard seed and then peacock feathers. Now moving on to my other set of flowers. So this is the other set that I created a mask for, and it's in the lower section of the background. So I first inked it up with peacock feathers, then stamped it, and now I'm moving on to salty ocean. Once I finished stamping that, I placed down the mask, and then I arranged my last 2 stamps that I'm going to stamp here on this panel. So I wanted to share with you guys this technique today because I wanted to give you another idea for these floral stamp sets. I love this wild rose stamp set. I think it's gorgeous, but it does lend itself really well for coloring, which is definitely a great option with this stamp set. But I wanted to share with you an idea if you're intimidated by coloring, or maybe you just don't want to do it all the time. I thought this was a great way to still add color to these beautiful flowers, but not have to spend all that time coloring. This technique is very easy and also very forgiving. You do not have to ink up your stamps perfectly to match the blended background. Just eyeing it is close enough and you will get a pretty similar ombre stamped image as the ombre that you ink blended. So now I'm going to move on to creating my sentiment. I have the new cake panel die. I really love this die set. It has everything you need to make a card, including the sentiment. So I have the sentiment that says always and forever from this set, and I'm going to die cut it out of this really pretty glitter vinyl, and vinyl has adhesive on the back, so that's going to make it really easy to stick it down onto our craft foam layer. So I'm going to take the same sentiment here and die cut it out of some white craft foam. Here it is completed. I love cutting sentiments out of craft foam because then I got some nice dimension on the card. I am going to trim off these little extensions from the words. That's actually to make it look like it's positioned inside of or at the top of the cake, but since we're not putting this on the cake, I can just trim those off really easy and then just get a really clean, clear, freestanding sentiment, which I think is a pretty cool way to use any of the sentiments that are included in that cake panel die. So I just stuck down the vinyl onto the craft foam, and then I went ahead off camera and trimmed off the little hanging off pieces on that as well. I'm now assembling the card, so I just adhered that ink blended and stamped panel down onto an A2 top folding card base made from 110-pound white cardstock. Now I'm going to take that sentiment and I'm going to add a little bit of this Tombow multi-liquid adhesive, little dabs of glue to the back of it, just being very careful not to put too much glue because I don't want it to just squish out when I stick it down. I'll grab an acrylic block here, just kind of hold it down while it sets up, that glue sets up a little bit. And then I'm going to use my Nuvo Morning Dew crystal drops here as an adhesive to stick down these really beautiful clear sequins. Just add a little bit of sparkle around that sentiment, and once I stick down all those sequins, my card is done. I'll hold it to the camera here so you can get a good look at that ink blended background, our ombre stamping. I really like how this card turned out. I think this is a really fun and unique idea to add color to those more floral images, especially those stamp sets that we would typically color maybe with markers or watercolors or colored pencils. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and technique. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon.